was in your pool. Everybody, welcome back to Psychology and the Soul. It's so good to be here today. I'm spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White, and I'm here with my dearest friend.
And I'm Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri, and we're so glad that you're here, and we're so glad to be back.
Oh my gosh, isn't it fun? Because Shirley and I have been off for the last month.
Yeah. We had to take a little break.
We had to take a break, which is so good for everybody.
Yeah.
But I had so much fun with you, Shirley. We went to a wedding together and we got to spend some time together.
Yeah. You came to visit me in LA and we just had so much fun. Back to your old roots.
Back to my old roots. Got to meet my friends. We had a good time.
Yeah, we had a really good time.
Oh my gosh. Brought my grandkids out there. We went to Disneyland. Oh my God. Can you say 18,000 steps in one day?
Oh my God. But somehow, isn't it funny? Because I guess there's so much excitement and so many things to see. You don't feel it until you get to the hotel.
Oh yeah. Until you stop.
All of a sudden it hits you like a brick wall, right?
Oh, yeah. Kaboom.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I'm so excited about our topic tonight because this topic, it's a really good one and it affects everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody I know has had this experience. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to be talking about today, everybody, is why do smart people stay in bad relationships?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this because, again, everybody I know has experienced this, whether personally, maybe through somebody that they know, that they love, could be happening right now. It could have been something in your past. I'll never forget in my past, in a horrific situation that the police were called. And actually it was the sheriff, and the sheriff turned to me and said, well, you're smart and you're this and you're that, and you have a, college education and you're, this and that, and have your own business and and why would you stay? That's the first time I ever been talked to like that. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, that person obviously did not know the psychological, let me just say clusterfuck.
Yeah.
That is involved, and it's not that easy. He was using his left logical brain. And if it were that easy, people wouldn't be and certainly wouldn't stay in bad relationships.
Right.
And maybe we would be out of a job,
Well, absolutely. And, we need to make sure everybody understands this. This picking or being in a difficult relationship happens to all kinds of people. It happens to doctors, lawyers, teachers, business owners, CEOs. I'll never forget a CEO that I had of a major corporation, who had a horrific secret life of a difficult spouse. Yeah. I mean, it was awful. But people with graduate degrees, people who seem incredibly strong. Oh, that's a big one, right?
Yeah.
People, everyone looks at how could somebody like them end up with somebody in a relationship like that? But here's the truth of this. Intelligence does not immunize us against any of this.
It has nothing to do with intelligence. It really doesn't.
So shall we talk about that?
Yeah. Well, relationships begin in the emotional brain, before the thinking brain gets to decide anything. And there's something that you're picking up on about another person, something that's, intangible. Maybe it's an energy. It's certainly a familiarity. And as I've said many times, the brain likes what's familiar because the brain is an anticipatory organ that will anticipate the future by the past. And that's what helps it feel safe because that's what it believes that will help survive. And it's all about survival. So unfortunately, if we've had bad, chaotic, abusive experiences in the past, that's what's familiar. And that will feel safer, actually, than something healthy and loving. And that's why therapy is so important when you notice if you have a pattern of choosing, unhealthy relationships.
Yeah. And so logic comes in later.
Logic comes in much later, but by the time logic comes in, you've bonded. And all mammals bond. I mean, you could see this in pets. You see a dog who, gets petted by other people, it's wagging its tail, whatever. But the minute the owner walks up, it is just going crazy. And that's because the bond is with its owner.
Yeah.
With its main person. And we're mammals and we do the same. Once we bond, it is just not that easy to unbond, even if you're having a difficult time.
So even in the most dire situations, it can be very tricky to leave.
Very, very tricky to leave. Yeah, yeah. And, attachment systems, how we attach to our first two people in our lives, usually it's the mom primary attachment. And by primary, it just means the first attachment. We can only attach to one person at a time. Those are largely unconscious. And so we're not really, it's almost like something that's happening underneath the surface. Mm-hmm. Until you take it to therapy as an example and you bring up what's in your unconscious into conscious awareness. And
you can still have a healthy attachment with a parent and still have this situation.
Yes, but it's something happened, and again, it's not to blame the parents, but it's to understand where your first attachment, where your first expectations happened. If you were attuned to, then that plants 3 seeds in a child's mind. I can depend on others. My needs are going to be met. So I'm lovable. I'm deserving to have needs. And the world is a safe place. But if that doesn't happen, then your seeds are, I can't depend on others. The world is unsafe. People abandon me. People mistreat me. And unfortunately, that's what becomes familiar, because love isn't simply a decision. It's also biology, psychology, and lived experience. It's everything involved.
Well, it's so much involved because I remember for me, I did have a very healthy attachment with my mother. My dad, maybe not so much. Years later, I had a traumatic event that caused me to make poor decisions after that. And I don't think that can happen too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's a lot of different angles to look at how we get there.
Absolutely. It's not just, the first 6 years of life is where the brain develops, right? So those are very, very important.
Very crucial. Yeah.
Very crucial. However, experiences that you then have later in life can also influence that a lot and influence you a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And again, we'll talk about this, but karma does play a place in Earth School. It plays a place here,
Yeah.
So, and I really think that what I hope everybody hears tonight, that it's not about blaming ourselves
No.
at all. And this isn't about judging somebody for staying. I will be accused of that many a time, but it's not about being judgy. And Holiday, if you're listening, it's not about being judgy. It's about understanding what happens beneath the surface, because once we understand the psychology of it, we begin to reclaim our power. And that's everything. And then we start understanding, which is my favorite part, our soul's journey. Yeah. Why did we come here?
Yeah.
So we have different, deep, heavy, difficult experiences. Earth was not set up as just the greatest fun school on earth. It just set up that way.
Well,
so instead, stop asking that question, is what's wrong with me?
Yeah. But that is so helpful to understand, the soul's journey piece of it.
It's everything.
Because it takes away a little bit from yourself and from thinking what's wrong with me to this is part of my soul's journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is this relationship trying to teach me? Wayne Dyer had a story that he would tell. It was somebody else he had heard the story from, so I'm going to paraphrase it. But you're walking on a road and there's this giant hole in the road and you just keep walking anyway and you fall into the hole. Okay. All right. Next, you see the same road. Okay. And you're walking, but this time you're determined to miss it. And you fall, of course, into the hole. The third time, this time you see the hole, but you walk around the hole and kind of slip back in. The fourth time, you take a new road.
Well, that is so interesting that you say that, because so many times in therapy, we talk about patterns of people that develop patterns in relationships and the people that they choose. And once we've done the work to heal the trauma that causes us to choose unhealthy people,
Yes.
they're like at a crossroads. And they can go the same way as they used to and get similar results, or they can try something new. And that's a visual that I use a lot.
I use that a lot, and that really did happen in my life. And I will tell you something important about what you just said, is that when you get there, now as you know, I'm a spiritual medium, and people will say, well, what does my father say about me leaving? It's not up to the father about if you're going to leave or stay or whatever. It's about, what are you learning? What is your free will choice going to be? They, on the other side, they can't get involved with that at all. It's your free will experience. So what choice are you going to make? So I have a couple of questions that I'm going to read, and I'm going to talk about these questions, or I'm going to read the questions, and then we'll answer them as we go throughout tonight's show. And one question is, she writes, it's very hard to watch somebody you love do this over and over, particularly a daughter or a son, picking, choosing over and over and staying over and over, when in a very challenging situation with children, where everybody else can see it and they might have a clue about how bad it is, but they keep going back. So the question was, Shirley, what advice do you ladies have for those that have to keep watching the relationship, especially when children are involved?
Well, that's a very, very tough one, because, I'm tempted to say you need to be understanding. And the more you push the person, especially our kids, to leave a relationship, the more they're going to resist. And it's about validating, understanding that bonds are not that easy to unbond, that you understand why they would stay, So part of it is you're validating them instead of just going against them and wondering, what's wrong with you? Why are you staying in this? And if the kids are in danger, then at that point, there needs to be a necessary report, but trying to come from understanding, I think, is going to help to open the lines of communication.
And the other side of that coin is set very strong boundaries. Oh, that's the choice that this person is making. Okay. And even though it's mother-daughter or mother-son, whatever it happens to be, you still make a strong boundary.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of right. And kind of the message is, I'm here when you're ready.
That's a great answer for that.
I'm here when you're ready. So stay a loving, open. You can say, I'm not agreeing with your choice because I see how much it's hurting you, but I'm here when you're ready.
Bad it is.
Right.
Oh my God.
Because if you go against them like that, you're going to isolate them, and you're actually pushing them closer to this person. Yeah.
It's true. But again, set a really good boundary there. So another question is, why does one that always looks at the brighter side always seem to get stuck in toxic, unhealthy love relationships? So I think what she means is, I always look at the brighter side. How did this happen?
Yeah.
Little Pollyanna-ish.
Right. I think there's a few things involved, sometimes they're in denial.
Yeah.
Sometimes they feel that it's going to change somehow, and they have that hope that it's going to change at some point. And I have to tell you, abusive relationships, toxic relationships aren't toxic all the time. There are times when the person acts like the human being you fell in love with. And that's what we call intermittent reinforcement. It's like gambling. You're at the slot machine, you're pushing, and you're pushing, and you're pushing. And every so often you get it. And the dopamine rush that you get, you continue. That's how they get people addicted. And the same thing happens in relationships. When the person acts loving for a moment, acts like the person you fell in love with, that brings so much hope. That can bring so much hope to someone. And that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, it does. That intermittent reinforcement.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, Shirley, how many times clients have sat in front of me and literally looked me directly in the eyes and would say, I know he's wrong for me. Or I know this relationship is hurting me. I know everybody else can see it. So why can't I leave? And every single time, it's heartbreaking, because they're really not asking for advice, Shirley. They're asking for freedom, and they're almost asking for permission here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I have said to them, many times, stay,
Yeah.
stay. You
Yeah.
do you.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, unfortunately, you know, some people will make a very conscious choice to prefer not being alone
Yes.
and staying
Hmm.
in a toxic relationship.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so
Yeah.
true.
Because of those moments of, connection that can be very sporadic, but they still exist. No one is all bad 24/7.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what about knowing and changing? Describe how they're different neurological processes.
Well, because it's left brain and right brain. The left brain is the logical, reasonable, side of the brain. That again, if that's the brain that could always take over, we'd be out of a job, and our society would work so well.
Right.
The right part of the brain, and I'm just making it simple for the sake of this conversation, is the emotional brain, and that's where we bond. That's where familiarity feels safe. That's where, you know, we want to give someone a second chance, especially when they act loving towards us. And so, just because doesn't mean you can change.
Right. So,
You
Shelley,
know,
are you saying that emotional attachment can override rational thinking?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Insight alone doesn't create a behavior change. Many people we know right or wrong, pretty much, right?
Mhm.
But when we're emotionally attached, and that's the bond that I'm talking about, it is so hard to unbond with someone that we've bonded to, you know. So, and trauma histories influence our relationship choices, you
Right.
know.
So, what you're saying there is if we had a father that was traumatic, or a family member, or a past relationship
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
was traumatic.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you grew up in a chaotic home, if you grew up with love was withholding, if you grew up in an abusive home, that's what feels familiar. And unfortunately, that's what you're going to gravitate towards. So
Wow.
it's so important to, if you notice yourself in that kind of a pattern, to go to therapy to help heal those wounds, because I've seen it over and over again, in therapy where people are picking the same. I had this woman, she was picking the same person. And for her, it was, she didn't get a lot of attention from her parents. So it's men that couldn't commit, that didn't want to commit, that wanted kind of, in the relationship, but not really. And she just yearned for this connected relationship. And we worked and healed her wounds. And then all of a sudden she came in and she goes, I met this guy. I'm not completely attracted to him. I'm not sure, but I think I'm going to continue to date him. And all of a sudden the love grew, and he was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So we may not find, and this is what happens, we may not find that kind of animalistic, feeling towards that person. But know that when you feel that, more often than not, what you're feeling is a familiar pattern, and that pattern may not be healthy for you.
So true.
Yeah. I had a colleague who would say, whenever I would meet somebody, if I felt that animalistic connection, I would just turn around and walk the other way, because I knew it was trouble.
Trouble. I used to say, if somebody says darling to me, run. Run.
But that's what gets you.
Oh, that's always got me.
Yeah.
Fear of loss. Let's talk about that, because some people would fear the loss so greatly that they'll stay.
Yeah, the fear of loss often can be greater than the pain of staying. Gosh. Because that loneliness, especially if you grew up kind of in a neglectful family and you felt so lonely, it feels, it just, you're now dealing with the loneliness of the breakup, but it's also, if you haven't dealt with it, it's also bringing up the loneliness of your childhood, and that can sometimes feel insurmountable.
Wow. This is why therapy is so important.
Yeah,
It should be required. It's important stuff. So why do we fall in love with some people and not others? Now let's start there, because I think the question really is, why that person? Why not someone healthy?
Yeah.
Is what I'm always screaming now. I didn't even know what healthy was. I swear I didn't have a clue what healthy was until for years and years. But why not somebody that's emotionally available? Because a lot of people do not pick emotionally available people.
Yeah.
And why do we sometimes feel this overwhelming pull towards somebody who eventually will hurt us? In other words, red flag, red flag, red flag.
Right. Well, that's just it, because it's familiar.
Yeah.
So we have to understand where we came from, again, not to blame our parents, but to understand what we're used to, what's familiar to us, and just know from the left brain that that's probably who we're going to be attracted to. The problem is that people can hold it together. And at the beginning of the relationship, there's that kind of, what do they call it, limerence, or that love part, where everything is great. And it's not that someone's faking it. They're really feeling that. And so it takes about 6 to 9 months for the true colors to show up, and by then
already bonded, right?
By then you're bonded. But in childhood attachment, patterns shape our attraction because, again, it's what's familiar.
Right.
Sometimes we mistake intensity for compatibility.
Oh, that's a big one.
Many people who are attracted to people that fall under the narcissist continuum is because of the love bombing. And many of those people were emotionally neglected as kids. And when you are love bombed, when you're made to feel like you're the most special person in the world, it's a drug. And it's a drug that many times you cannot resist.
Right. I have to tell you, I have a good love bombing story. I just have to say this. I know I have a very good person that's very close to me who started dating. And on the very first date, a love bomber showed up, and the love bomber brought said person a large credit card to go to a spa. That was date one.
Wow.
Now, you're going to be in trouble when. And the second date was 2 more credit cards. There was no third date after that because it was so evident that it was a love bomb.
Right.
To pay attention to these things, right?
Yeah. And then some people can be, the love bombing can show up as so romantic.
Oh, yeah.
I had someone who went out with this gentleman. He had made reservations in 2 of the most exclusive restaurants in LA so she could choose what restaurant she wanted to go to, and then at the end of the date, they went to his house and they slow dance, drank tequila liqueur. And I mean, it was just one of the most romantic dates she had ever been on. And that kind of hooked her, It
would now, but back in the day.
Pardon me?
Back in the day, it wouldn't now.
Yeah.
Now we've had, and that's the other thing about the world now is kind of interesting. There's so much social media talking about the red flags, things that we didn't know. At least I didn't know back in the day. I didn't have a chance to learn any of this stuff.
Yeah.
What to look for.
Absolutely. Nobody really kind of tells you what to look for. You just like what you like, and you think that you like it, for a good reason. Also, sometimes emotional unpredictability can feel exciting because it activates the reward system. Every time you get that reward, that feels so good and so relieving that then the toxic behavior shows up and you're just waiting for that reward.
Right. Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Actually, a woman came into my office. I don't know. It was a while back, and she was successful, and she was educated, and she was beautiful. She was totally confident. I mean, she managed dozens of people, wild success, but she said something that I will never forget. She said, I negotiate $1 million contracts every single week, but I can't seem to leave one man who keeps breaking my heart. And that sentence stopped me, frankly, because it reminded me that our careers don't necessarily reflect our attachment wounds, right?
Not at all.
Success is one part of life, but it doesn't automatically heal another.
No.
So what she eventually discovered wasn't that she lacked strength. She discovered that every time he pulled away, it awakened something much older. And it was a little girl that had learned that love had to be earned. Right. So that's, again, why therapy is so important. And that insight for her changed everything in her life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because what we observe from our parents, kids are observing everything, whether we realize it or not. Right. And how we're treated by our parents, then that's going to set the stage for who you may choose as a partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Wow.
And for you, Kellee, like what patterns stand out? Like in when you see your clients and they talk about, I mean, this woman was very interesting that you just mentioned.
So what patterns do I see? Well,
Yeah.
first thing I look at when I'm working with somebody who has this exact situation,
Mhm.
and probably 3 times a week, I hear a story. And my favorite was, I just had this the other day. This woman said to me, "It's very complicated." Oh, tell me. I really, I'd love to know what the complication is.
Yeah.
And are things complicated? Yes. And there are things that I hear every single day, which, my husband is alcoholic, drug addict, abusive. I can't leave because I'm Catholic. Or, I mean, I have all, these kind of things going on. And so
Yeah.
what I look at is, and when we date and when we start going out and we start meeting people, often we will choose with karma. So I will look at the karma of what's going on here, because I think that's really an important message. Um,
Mhm.
is we often will get involved with somebody. Literally, somebody will say, "Oh, he's my soulmate," or "I feel like there's such a connection." Well, sometimes there really is a deep connection, and it's from a previous life that was never healed, and so the abuse continues.
Yeah.
We have those situations.
I've had that experience where, because I've had my share of, you know, not the healthiest men. And when I would do some spiritual work, they would tell me that it was karma, and I had been with this person in the past, and in the past I didn't walk away from the relationship, and so in this lifetime I needed to,
Right.
to kind of break that karmic.
Right. And I think that's important about that statement is in this lifetime, it is such a crucial lifetime to be able to break those old patterns. We have everything available to us now, all kinds of things to learn and read and therapy and all kinds of things, somatic work, Shirley, all kinds of ways to heal. You have to slow down enough. Often we jump from one relationship to the other relationship, picking badly each time until we stop and go, wait a minute, I need to go inward and see what's going on. Who am I picking? Because I think it's really important that, and I want everybody, to think about this. Like when you first have met somebody that you've loved, and this is a great question. Did they make you feel peaceful? Or did they make you feel emotionally activated? Because those are very different experiences. And sometimes peace feels unfamiliar. When I met Don, it was very unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
Because there was no chaos.
Yeah.
It was so odd. And a lot of people sometimes choose chaos over everything because they think that chaos is the chemistry.
Well, and that's what's familiar, What I love what you're saying. I remember I was working with this one gal who always said she wanted someone dependable. She wanted someone who could commit. She wanted someone who everything she wanted, and she would choose the exact opposite, right? People that would leave her, people that would. And so I did this kind of somatic experience with her.
Okay.
And I said, close your eyes. I go, and imagine. You can blur his face, but imagine that you get a man who looks in your eyes and says, I love you so much, and I'm here. And what her body language did was this.
She turned away?
She turned away. She wasn't ready for that. It's what she said she wanted, but she hadn't healed her trauma enough to be able to accept that in her life, even though she kept saying this is the kind of person that she wants. So we can say that. And then if we're choosing the opposite type of person, we need to be curious about that.
So my favorite part of therapy is when somebody will say this and then they say that. They say exactly what you just said. And I love to be the one to point it out and go, you just said this, but first you just said that. I did? Yeah. They literally they're confused that they actually did that.
Right.
That's so fascinating. So let's talk about what is a trauma bond, Shirley.
Yeah. Well, it's not simply just loving one deeply. It's developed through repeated cycles of emotional pain followed by emotional relief. So two people who have maybe similar traumas in their background or different traumas, but at the same kind of intensity.
Okay.
Right. And so the relationship becomes unpredictable. But again, there's moments where they act like the person you fell in love with, and that brings the relief. And so you stay in it, because you're craving that kind of relief. You're craving the relief after the distress. And that's what we had talked about moments before, the intermittent reinforcement.
Yeah.
So you're trauma bonded with this person first because it's familiar. If you come from trauma, it's familiar. And then there's those moments of relief, and that cycle strengthens over time. It's a learned emotional pattern. It's not a lack of intelligence. So that's an important piece to understand.
Okay. So that word pattern feels really important, because people will often tell themselves, if we could just get back, I've heard this so many times, if we could just get back to how it was, or if I could just say the right thing, if they would just change. Oh my gosh. But maybe that's not actually attached to stability. Maybe they're attached to unpredictability.
Yeah.
And then unpredictability can become incredibly addictive.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's that whole intermittent reinforcement. That's like the slot machine.
Okay.
Where every so often you get what you want. And because you're bonded, that getting what you want feels like a drug.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
It would. And I love that example of that, because it helps explain why so many people, put struggle into words. It's really hard for them, because they're not staying in this struggled relationship because they enjoy the pain, but they're staying because they remember the moments when everything felt beautiful, and that those moments become the promise that they're always trying to get back to.
Exactly. And the important thing that I always say when I'm working with people is, yes, that is a very real part of them. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. But so is this part.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore this part just because this part feels so good.
Right. Yeah. Right. And the brain remembers relief.
Yeah. And because it feels so good, it can keep someone going and waiting for that next moment of relief.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This reminds me, I worked with a woman who, again, very successful. And she looked at me one day and she said, he is so wonderful. My husband is so wonderful. And then she stopped and she said, 3 days a month.
Right. Wow.
I mean, I said, well, tell me about those 3 days. And she said, he's affectionate. He laughs. He listens. He tells me he loves me. And I said, what about those other 27 days? She got really quiet. And she said, I spend those days trying to get back to those first 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
they can be so addictive, those first, those moments, especially if you didn't get them as a kid, or if you did get them as a kid, then that becomes even more familiar. And that's what defines to you what love is, what love looks like. The brain remembers relief because it calms the whole nervous down, and hope temporarily reduces that emotional pain. So when you have that hope, you're waiting for it, you're waiting for it, you're waiting for it. And those intermittent rewards really strengthen the attachment connection.
Right.
So again, it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with conditioning.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and when somebody says, I think this relationship is teaching me something, that's an important question. Mm-hmm. And then I like to expand, what is it teaching?
Yeah.
And where are you with the teaching? And how long do you want to stay in this teaching? Do you understand the teaching?
Right.
You get the lesson.
Right.
Because again, it's like these roads. If you don't get the lesson, you will really repeat the lesson until you get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also you start to, you don't realize because it happens so slowly, but you start to, in those 27 days that she's not getting what she wants, and maybe there's abuse or put downs or, disagreements, she's losing part of herself.
Oh, completely. People will literally say this to me, Shirley. They'll say, maybe this relationship, I've heard this so many times, this relationship is my purpose. I always want to go, what? Yeah. No. Maybe I'm supposed to heal this person. All right, please, time to leave. Maybe if I love them enough, is this really the lesson? Let's see. No, the lesson is always going to be about, what are you taking on? what is it about you? What is it that you, because you're a soul that's here to grow and to have free
Yeah.
will and to make really good choices here. Are you
Right.
in abuse by claiming to help this person?
Right. Right. And you know, and
Fine.
it's also maybe the lesson is choosing yourself when you were never chosen, when you don't have that experience, when when you never felt chosen by your parent, you know, through whatever experiences.
Right. Because is that lesson finally meaning, are you saying, is it to abandon yourself?
Right.
No, we're not here to abandon ourselves
Yeah.
for somebody else like that. No,
Yeah.
we are not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to really understand also what a healthy relationship looks like, even if you haven't experienced that, especially in childhood. Again, we learn so much from how our parents are, which is why it's so important for a parent to know that how they're acting, you know, how they're behaving with their spouse, their kids are watching, and you're teaching
Right.
how a boy treats a woman, and you're teaching how a woman treats a man.
Yeah.
You know, and it also in homosexual relationships the same way. You're teaching how you treat each other to your child. So it's important to keep in mind, is this what I want to teach my child? You know,
So important.
yeah, because healthy love supports identity.
Mhm.
You know, unhealthy love erodes identity. You're picking, you're criticizing, and it happens little by little by little until eventually you feel like a shell of yourself.
Ah,
Yeah. Secure relationships increase confidence. They put each other up. There's no jealousy there. You're happy when your spouse, when your partner is doing well. You know, they don't require constant self-monitoring.
that's huge.
Exactly. You shouldn't feel scared for what you're going to say to your partner.
Mhm.
You know, and love should create safety. You know, not chronic anxiety. If you find yourself being more anxious in your relationship because you're not sure what's going to happen, that is really something to take a look at.
Oh my gosh. I mean, really think about the person that you are involved in a relationship with currently. And then when that name appears on your phone, what happens in your body? Do you immediately feel peace? Do
Yeah,
you feel your stomach tighten?
yeah,
Do you wonder, are they upset like a good empath would think? Did
right.
I do
Yeah.
something wrong? Again, empath. What
Mhm.
version of them am I getting today? Again, a lot of this, when you're an empath, these are the kind of questions that come up for you, actually.
Right. Which is such an important observation, you know, and since I work so somatically, you know, we pay attention to those physical responses.
To
You
the
know, what
body.
is your body? How does your body feel?
Hmm.
Because the nervous system is keeping the score,
Yeah.
you know, and if you're finding yourself walking on eggshells, that's not intimacy. Chronic anxiety is information.
Yeah.
You know, healthy relationships become emotionally predictable, and that feels safe. You know, safety should feel more familiar over time, not less. You know what? Secure, attached relationships have one thing that they know absolutely hands down about their partner, is that my partner isn't going to deliberately do something to hurt me.
Ah,
So when your partner does something that's hurtful or that isn't fully, thought out or considers me or something, knowing that they wouldn't do it deliberately, then you can be curious. You know, this really hurt my feelings, and the partner can hear that and respond to that and validate how you're feeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think one of the hardest relationships to leave isn't necessarily the most abusive, but sometimes it's the relationship that just gives you just enough hope to stay, because hope is a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing and hope
Mm-hmm.
heals us or helps us through difficult situations.
Yeah.
And hope always helps us believe that tomorrow can be better. But
Yeah.
hope becomes dangerous when we're no longer hoping based on evidence. And that's why I said Pollyannish. Like I clearly see things from the most positive light. I really do. But I also am very aware if there's abuse in a situation.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. There's a difference between believing in someone's potential
Hmm.
and building your life around their patterns. Potential is who someone can become.
Mm-hmm.
Patterns are who they're choosing to be. And there's a big difference. We may see a potential in person.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Profound distinction there.
Yes, absolutely. We may see the potential in someone, but if they can't get there, that's their journey.
Yeah. Oh, I've thought that with many relationships in the past.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, well, I see the potential, but I was just naive. And really, again, I go back to, we didn't have the tools we have today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even just in social media tools, that you'll read something. I have different people will say, I saw this on social media and it really got my attention. And it was about, leaving a narcissist or understanding the way a narcissist thinks. It really makes a big difference.
Oh, that's some of the beauty, I think. And I know that social media always has criticism and stuff, but that's some of the beauty that can come with it. You can learn so much. And if you see your partner identified in this, take it seriously, listen, take it in. Yeah.
And some people can get addicted to this hope. We call it hope addiction. I think that everybody has that moment in a relationship when a relationship ends where they look back and they go, the signs were there. Yeah. I saw them. I just didn't listen. And I don't think that people ignore red flags necessarily because they're foolish. I think they ignore them because, again, hope, is incredibly powerful. So we don't fall in love believing that we're going to get hurt, but we do fall in love believing that we finally found our person. So let me ask you, Shirley, why does hope become stronger than reality?
Yeah. Well, because the brain naturally looks for evidence that confirms what we want to believe.
Okay.
And so we're looking at, it's called confirmation bias. The habit of the mind where people look for, remember, and accept facts that match what they already believe and ignoring things that prove them wrong. Because when there's an emotional attachment, emotions many times don't make any sense. And so facts are not going to change that. Facts mean nothing, And so once we're emotionally invested, we can explain away the behaviors that don't fit our hopes. We rationalize, we excuse, they had a bad day, they come from a lot of trauma. We minimize red flags, because accepting them would require us to make a painful decision.
Right.
A hope is healthy until it replaces reality.
Boy, I love that distinction.
Yeah.
Hope isn't the problem. It's when hope asks us to ignore what we are repeatedly experiencing.
Exactly. And what we can look at, where hope can be helpful is if the person's behavior starts to shift. First of all, if they can own the behavior.
Yeah.
Many times we can't help it because that's part of their trauma. And when we get really, really angry, the thinking part of the brain literally goes offline and we're just coming from our emotional brain. And so I consult a lot of couples to choose a word, a benign word that means, okay, I'm getting too upset. I won't be able to talk right now. And I will inevitably say something I don't mean.
Right.
So we need to know that about ourselves. But if you start to notice shifts in behavior, then that is actual hope that the person might, that you might get into a more, a healthier relationship that's more reciprocal.
Yeah, it's so true. That's so true, Shirley.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, a lot of people actually believe, if I love them enough, or if I'll finally feel safe, and all of that. And I think that I think that I'd like to see people start looking at things in a more of a reality, as opposed to what they could be in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And I have to say, a lot of times, Shirley, people will ask me about like twin flames or the soulmates. With soulmates, I call them cellmates. I mean,
right.
Soulmates, so many people can be our soulmates. You're my soulmate, Shirley. I mean, I have so many, different soulmates because we have contracts before we come in. Certain people are going to be really that close to us.
Yeah.
And help us learn and grow and all of that. And then people will ask me, what about, he's my twin flame, even though he just screwed me over. He is my twin flame. Right. I mean, that just feels like some real deep attachment. And often, if there were a twin flame, and I'm not sure if there is or if there isn't, I've said this many, many times.
Yeah.
And I'm a spiritual medium, and I who knows, but that I don't know about. But I do believe that there are certain people that come in to really teach us certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times do you want to have, if it's a painful relationship or a painful experience, how often do you want to have that?
Yeah.
So I think you have to really start choosing yourself and your own awareness.
Yeah.
Where am I in my awareness? And again, on earth, we're constantly growing and our consciousness is constantly changing and evolving, and we come to evolve.
Yeah. And I think that's when people are convinced that they're with their twin flame or, or soulmate. What was that?
This was destined.
Right. And so they will tolerate more unhealthy behavior than they may not. And so that is an important piece to take to someone like you to talk about that, because bad behavior is still bad behavior, whether the person is your soulmate or not.
Oh my gosh. I mean, again, if somebody comes to me and they have that kind of a belief system, I will try to poke holes in it right away. Say, all right, what have you learned? What are you learning now? Where are we with your learning? Because I think that's so important. And you can have peaceful relationships. There are those out there. It's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the lesson is to remember who you were before you started believing that you had to maybe earn love.
And a piece is also deserving. Do you feel deserving of healthy love?
Yeah.
And if you come from a lot of trauma, again, it may not feel as exciting initially.
Yeah. And
that's okay, because you will form then a bond with someone completely different, who you will learn to, who you eventually will fall in love with, and who you eventually will form a bond, and it will feel safe.
Right. Here we have a little exercise here for the audience. It might be interesting, and you don't have to do this now, but think about this. Draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper, and on one side write who I was before this relationship, and the other side, who am I today? So who was I before this relationship, and who am I today?
Yeah.
And don't judge the answers, just notice them.
Yeah.
Have you become more of yourself? A good relationship, a healthy relationship, you will be really more of yourself. And if you are less of yourself, then start asking the questions. What's going on here?
Yeah, then I would be curious about that. I love that exercise, because healing begins with awareness. We can't change something we're not aware of. So it's so important to bring that into conscious awareness. And by doing this exercise and actually writing it down, it's right there in front of you.
Right. Because you want to look at, are you losing yourself in a relationship?
Right.
And then, of course, it gets scary once you start recognizing this. It gets a little scary, and you may need a therapist to help you figure this out, what you're going to do. Or, again, that's where a good therapist really can help you.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah, because before we can change our relationships, we need to reconnect with ourselves. And that's what that exercise can help people do.
Yeah. I think that's extremely important. And again, leaving, it's so funny. Most people think that leaving should be the easiest part. It can be very traumatic and really hard to do it. I mean, once you recognize the relationship isn't healthy, once you've seen the red flags, once you've admitted the truth to yourself, which is that's the big one, people assume that the next logical step is just to walk away. That rarely happens. Sometimes it feels more painful than staying.
Yeah.
But it's hard, especially if there are children involved. And that's why you need, there are a lot of steps that can happen.
Right. And ending a relationship is both an emotional and a biological loss, and what you're grieving also is not just the person, it's the future you imagined to have with that person. That's part of what is difficult also to walk away from. The nervous system resists uncertainty. It likes what, if I said over and over again, it likes what's familiar. And so, loss activates many regions of the brain that feel like physical pain. And physical pain runs in the same circuitry as emotional pain. So it actually hurts, which is why the term "my heart is breaking."
Yes.
You know, um, it's just not that easy to leave, because also you're leaving what you planned, your future. You're also leaving what you thought your future was going to be like
Right.
and
The
look like.
holidays, the vacations, the growing old.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like mourning a life that actually never happened.
Yeah, that can't happen anymore if you leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very, very important. I remember sitting with somebody who was completely exhausted, and a client, and she said, I don't even know if I'm crying because I miss him or because I miss the future I thought we were going to have.
Yeah. Exactly. So leaving requires grieving not only with what was,
Yeah.
but what we'd hope to be, what we hope it would be. And so that makes it, that kind of creates a double whammy that we don't think about. It's something that we really need to understand, again, so we don't get upset at ourselves as, why is this so difficult? Because there's a lot of factors involved. It's not just leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shirley, I know that we both of us spend a lot of time helping people reconnect with themselves after a heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about, like, our people, when they finally walk away, what happens? Like, what is a starting point for people to understand that?
Yeah. Well, it's noticing what you're feeling. Some moments you might feel relief because you've left, a toxic environment. And then you start to grieve. Then you start to remember the good parts, the intermittent reinforcement pieces that we were talking about, and maybe loneliness sets in. We're grieving the imagined futures. We created an emotional investment. So the worst thing is the loss of identity. I was a partner, I was a wife, I was a husband, I was, and when you really created an identity with this person, you can feel lost and say, who am I without this relationship?
Oh, I've had many people say that.
Yeah. So healing includes rebuilding your identity, who you are outside of this relationship.
Yeah. That is a big one.
Yeah.
That's very important. It's interesting that people don't usually just wake up one morning and then decide to lose themselves. It does happen, slowly it can happen. I'll let this go. It's not worth arguing about. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm asking for too much.
Right.
But then watch your inner voice. Has your inner voice gotten, very quiet? And again, it's what Shirley and I've been talking about. This is, is it from trauma? Is it from attachment? Is it what was familial to you? Is it a karmic thing? And if it's a karmic thing, have you worked it out, or continue to work it out, or just work it out? And it's okay to leave. When a karmic situation is over, you can feel it. When the energy is over, you can actually feel it. I'm done with this.
Yeah. And have a support system. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Do not isolate. I would even, if you're feeling it so deeply, join a support group. But really reach out to your support system. Go to therapy to help process the emotions that you're feeling. And many times it's very important to sit in those feelings. It feels counterintuitive because we think, if I sit in it, if I notice my stomach so tight or my heart so broken, it's going to be worse. And the truth is that it starts to dissipate. If you can sit with it long enough. And many times it's important to sit with another person. So you have you have a guide there. You have someone who can share that heartbreak with you, and you're not doing it alone.
And this is not about shaming or judgment.
No,
any of that. Again, as we've said, some of the smartest people in the world will go into this.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, every single person pretty much that I know has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 difficult relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Until we really learn to choose ourselves.
Right. Exactly. And that's not an easy thing to say, again, because of the connection. We're hardwired to be in connection with people. So even if it's a bad connection, that's what we're hardwired to do. So that takes a lot of strength and courage. And it's important to also validate that for yourself, the strength and the courage if you've left, a relationship that wasn't working for you, that didn't bring out the best in you.
Yeah. I think all of these, this is such a good conversation, Shirley, because we could go on and on about it, but I just want everybody to understand that, again, this can happen to anybody. It can just happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to feel, what do I want to do about this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when we have family members, that there's nothing that we can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
That's when, as prayer comes in handy, you just pray a lot and keep the door open.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But if you're not sure and this feels insurmountable, even though you do believe that you're in a relationship that isn't, that isn't good for you and you're feeling a shell of a person, go to therapy. Have mm-hmm. someone help guide you. Take it step by step. Yeah.
I think that's really important. And a couple of things I want to remind everybody, because we're back, Shirley. We're back again.
Yes, we are.
I'm so glad that we're back together again with our show. And I want to mention that I'll be back on this Thursday on my show, Ask Me Anything. And then on August 15th, I have The Power of 10. And I think I have 4 or 5 placements left if you want to join me on August 15th. It's 11 o'clock Central Time, 11 a.m. Central Time. It's about a 2-hour session. And I have 10 people that'll be there. And mm-hmm. It's a small, intimate group, but it's really always a powerful group. And depending on everybody gets 10 minutes with me. So whatever it is that you're needing, whatever that is, I'm reading, if you're needing, advice on something. And what I find about these groups is it all kind of merges together. And I might be speaking to one person, but it's really also for this other person. And mm-hmm. so interesting how that works. And the other thing that I want to mention is, which we're really excited about, is on October 24th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, Shirley and I and Jen Weigel are going to be at the Wayfarer Theater in Highland Park, Illinois, live. So it's going to be me, Dr. Shirley, and Jen Weigel, and we're going to do gallery readings. We're going to have live questions and answers. We're going to do a book signing and a meet and greet. But if you've ever wanted to be with Shirley and me live, and Jen Weigel, who's really wonderful, so bright, we're going to be answering all kinds of questions. And again, I'll do some readings for the gallery, and it'll be a fun evening. That's Saturday, fun. October 24th, right?
Yeah, that'll be so fun. I can't wait.
So you can go to my website, kelleewhite.com, and you can find that under events. And what else, Shirley? I think that's about everything that we have going on right now.
Yeah. I think so. Well, aren't we doing a web teaching?
Do we have a teaching event coming up?
I think so.
I'll have to look.
So out of it, we'll have to look, and we'll share it with you next time. Yeah.
We have a lot going on.
Yeah,
but
we have a lot.
We're back from vacation.
Exactly. Thank you for spending this time with us. And if this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who may need to hear it. Sometimes understanding the psychology behind our patterns is the first step towards changing them. It's about understanding so we don't judge. Always, as I've always said, curiosity is the antidote to judgment and criticism, and always remember, asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's why we come to earth, for wisdom.
Yes.
Anyway, well, take care, my friends. Have a great week. Join me Thursday for Ask Me Anything, and Shirley and I will be back next Tuesday with a very good show.
Yes. All right. See everybody later. Have a wonderful evening.